Yes! 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 Yes!
The latest film from Walt Disney Animation Studios is Wish, a celebration of its 100-year legacy, and this has been heavily promoted in the trailers for the movie as well, a centenary in the making, according to the trailers. But I want to start in 2012, because just prior to screenings of Disney's Wreck-It Ralph, Disney added a short film by the name of Paperman. Now, Paperman, I think, is a terrific piece of work, and what it also is an astounding marriage of where digital animation was at the time, that it married up the digital tools Disney had with hand-drawn layered over the top, thus keeping the traditions of old whilst bringing in some of the new as well. And it pointed at a slightly different future for the form of animation. Now, the problem was that Disney was looking at this marriage but knew that where technology was back then, it was incredibly expensive to expand it to feature film length. In fact, as it turns out, that any kind of union of this ilk has taken over a decade to bring to proper fruition. And that's Wish, this new film from Disney, and there are moments in it, again, playing to the studio's centenary, where the sheer look of it is absolutely magical. There's a familiarity to it, yet also, in a strange way, it's wildly different to look at by the way things are blended together. As such, in the foreground, you get the computer animation, which is as gold standard as you would expect from Walt Disney Animation Studios. But it's the details around. There are sketches that appear on screen. There is 2D. There are traditional looking backgrounds. It's seamless as well, the fact that all this moves together in the same frame, of just making me want to buy a ticket for a second viewing of the film, just to look at it, just to sit back and gaze. The film itself, well, the film's fine, and I appreciate its brazen attempt to get me on side by having someone in it ask for cake within the first 5 minutes. That's lovely. And then it sets up the premise, which is 17-year-old Asher, whose grandfather, Sabino, is celebrating his 100th birthday. But Asher ponders, will his birthday wish be granted? Well, that power of that lies in the hands of the facial-haired King Magnifico, voiced by Chris Pine. And Magnifico has set up an island and built a kingdom on it. This is a kingdom to which people can sail, make their wishes, and hope they're granted. Magnifico then keeps all the wishes safe. He grants a few each year via wish ceremonies, and do you know what? I'm already conscious I'm doing a lot of explaining, just as the movie itself has to do. Now, Wish, to be fair, handles that explaining better than me. There's a traditional feeling Disney storybook opening, a bit of tightly written narration, a lovely traditional font as well. But then once things get going, we're a bit on our own. And as things start to get more complex, as more factors that I don't want to spoil are dropped in, well, let's just say I'll come back to that. Because up front, I want to say that Wish does much right. The central character of Asher, voiced by Ariana DeBose, you cannot help but root for, and DeBose's voice crackles with personality and life. Furthermore, her early scenes where she applies to become the apprentice for Magnifico, and Chris Pine again, nice singing voice, well, those scenes are a lesson of economy in storytelling. It feels like there's a scene in there that does a lot of character work, telling us more about the world fairly seamlessly as well, and throwing in some bonus test tubes in the background. Against this, the narrative ends up competing, though, with both an overt and an implicit celebration of Disney's own heritage. So, hat tips to characters, moments from movies past, visual nods, little music cues. Wish isn't set in a shared universe per se, but it's very much in a sandbox where it can play to a crowd of Disney admirers, which it duly does. Also playing to the crowd, the musical numbers, to the point where after one of them in the film, it basically stops to take in a round of applause. Not surprising either, the musical numbers here are good. We're not talking Frozen or Moana level, they're tough yardsticks, but the songs are still good. My favourite being Knowing What We Know Now. Such is the approach to the songs that it's no surprise in the end crawl that we see an enormous choir listed among the credits. We get full-on anthems here. We get very much trying to keep to the Disney tradition. And there are risks in it. There are risks in the willingness in the animation to almost leave thumbprints on the characters to leave us in little doubt these are handcrafted. There are also dancing chickens. There's a bit of knitting. There is no shortage of baked products. But also what there is just a bit too much to shoulder and less risk in the story itself. That the welcome and very brisk 93-minute running time, which flies by, it accomplishes much, but I never really felt it fully got on top of its premise. I mean, there's a lot to distract you from what it's not able to do, with a procession of standout sequences, but not unlike Pixar's Elemental, I think when you tap at the world and start asking questions of it, it's all a little bit more fragile than it first appears. Just like with Elemental, as the film went on, I just distanced myself a little and just found myself tapping at it all a little bit more. Now, in its favour, very much in the favour of Wish, I did get to a point where there was much I was enjoying, but I did wonder, what would Wish look like if it was being released in Disney's 98th year and not its 100th? If you took some of those celebrations out, and the end credits are lovely, but what would the film look like? What would that part of it look like? And my guess is you get what's at its heart, the story of an interesting young woman trying to work out how the world of wishes works in what often boils down to a two-hander between her and King Magnifico. Mildly muddled, sometimes joyous, a very welcome butt joke, and a listing in the credits for Chicken Ensemble. That is utterly to be encouraged. It's hard to think that anyone's going to feel too shortchanged by Wish, and it can take its place in the midst of the Disney heritage it's saluting fairly seamlessly, but not in the front row, perhaps more comfortably in the crowd. It does feel, though, going back to Paperman, a better visual realisation of what that film hinted at than a fully rounded story in its own right. One more little thing, I'm just interested what people think of the post-credit sequence, which I'm not spoiling here. I just wonder if there are any Mad Men fans in there who made the same link that I did. Feel free to put that in the comments. It's not something I ever really thought I'd end a review with, certainly of a Disney film. But Wish, playing in cinemas now at the time this has been recorded, it's 3 stars from me. A fun 3 stars, but 3 stars.